All right. Summer 2021 Aggies. This is CVEN 424. You should have already watched the introduction video at this point. I'm Pete England, Dr. England, but I encourage you to call me Pete. This is an introductory video into sort of the content, the primary subject of the course, which is technical communication. And technical communication is substantially different from what you've been taught to do up until now. So this is worth paying attention to. So what is this class about? Generally speaking, it's about rhetoric. It's a subject we've been studying since Aristotle, or maybe a little bit before. So that's about 2,500 years. It uses logos, ethos, and pathos, right? Logic, credibility, and emotion in order to persuade an audience or inform an audience. Technical communication is a subset of rhetoric, right? It's getting subject-specific, often complex information from those who know it to those who need to know it so they can make a decision or perform an action. So technical communication, what you're going to do in the office place as a civil engineer, is a subset of the larger ancient field of rhetoric. So why should you have to study technical communication at all? So the evidence is overwhelming. You will get a job or a job offer because of your degree, your major, and the school you went to. Civil engineers from Texas A&M tend to get hired. Everything past that, right? So as soon as you sign your name on the dotted line, pretty much 90% of your career is going to be dictated based on how well you write and speak. When you talk with professional practicing engineers who've been practicing 20, 30 years, oftentimes what you hear, not all the time, but oftentimes what you hear is that 5, maybe 10% of their week is doing what they consider engineering work, and that the rest of it is speaking and writing. This chart shows you what essentially I just said. At 0 to 5 years, from graduating college up to 5 years experience in the workplace, engineers report 34% of engineers report writing half or more of their work week, right? So that's 1/3 of beginning engineers saying they're writing for 50% or more of their work week. By the time you get to 5 to 10 years, that's your project managers, right? 83% say that they spend half or more of their work week writing. When you get to the 10 to 20 year mark, it starts to decline, and then 20 years and more, it declines even more because the more advanced partners are speaking more often than they are writing, and they're also checking other people's writing more often than they're writing themselves. But the job of civil engineer could easily be called writer, since that will likely be the majority of your work. So the biggest issues that we see in this class, so I've talked a lot, I've said, well, technical writing's different, and this is how much other engineers do it, and blah, blah, blah. Why is that? Why should there be any problems in this class? Well, because for roughly 16 years, right, kindergarten through senior year of high school through senior year of college, roughly 16 years, you've been encouraged to write essays. History, political science, English, of course. They all encourage you to write academic essays. Of course, that's the 5-paragraph monster, right? And or other, slight variations. You haven't had much practice in making informative, wide-reaching visuals, right? Tables, charts, pie charts, graphs, a good map. Things like that. That's a little bit more advanced. You'd think it wouldn't be, but it is. Essays, you will probably never write another essay once you graduate. You will probably never get paid to write an essay. You will get paid to render your opinion, and that'll have some overlap with essays, but for the most part, you're going to be writing memos, proposals, bids, reports. What you might have been taught so far about writing is that more is better, right? If I say I want at least 10 pages on the scarlet letter, well, if you turn in 12, you're an overachiever. And that therefore the length of the paper, of the writing, is important, right? And that has to do with value. Mechanical correctness is important. Sentence variation is important. And introducing your topic is important. Of course, introducing your topic is indeed important, but what if you're writing to another expert, right? You don't actually have to introduce your topic, and much of your writing will be to other experts. And mechanical correctness is indeed important, but is it the most important thing? If you mess up there, and there, will they still know that you're writing about a prefab steel bridge? What we need you to learn and practice about writing is that in the workplace, time is money. If you can do it in 2 pages instead of 10, you're not a slacker, you're a hero. Okay? So shorter is better. Clarity is king. Clarity reigns in technical writing and engineering writing. Clarity far outranks any other goal you could have. Get to the point quickly. Right? You don't have to give me 100 years worth of background on bridge design. Tell me about this bridge. Get to it. Writing is more than sentences and paragraphs, right? You need to use headings. You need to use tables. You need to use graphs, charts, pictures, all those things. And we're going to talk about all that in this class. So the qualities that you should be aiming for in your writing, right, are not necessarily, let's say, loquaciousness and an extensive vocabulary and sentence variation. Instead, what you should be aiming for is focus, clarity, accuracy, and is it persuasive? In other words, are you authoritative? Do you sound believable? Your goals, right, so those are qualities of the writing that you're aiming for. And your goals, what you want to accomplish is to improve safety, right? Good engineering writing improves safety. You want to decrease cost. You want to save time. Increase contact. You want to decrease misunderstanding. Look at that whole long list and look at how it all boils down to more safety, more savings, right? Writing is critically important to your job as a civil engineer. And of course, we'll talk more about that later in the semester. Remember, verbally, your audience will remember about 10% of the information. What we know from research is that by the time I hit the end of this sentence, a lot of you will have forgotten how I started it. That's how human brains work. With a picture, sometimes, right, picture and text, sometimes you get 65% retention. Look how much better that is, right? If you're sitting in on a history lecture and I'm teaching you about the Civil War, on average, people in the class will remember about 10% of what I said. But about 65% will remember a picture that I showed them. And if you have motion, if you have an effective video, you get about 75 to 80% retention. Now, so you can't always have all those things, right? You can't always have pictures. You can't always have motion or video. But take a look at that link. That's a well-done video. But what we're trying to emphasize here is that when it comes to technical communication, remember, you're no longer trying to impress the teacher. You're trying to teach someone how or why to do something. And that's a different goal. Information delivery is strategic. This is what Aristotle taught us. It hasn't changed since then. Audience, purpose, and message equals medium, right? Audience, who are you talking to? Purpose, why are you talking to them? Message, what are you talking to them about? That means how you deliver it. That means email, text, interview, survey, face-to-face, brick through the window, right? What's your delivery medium, right? All those things, because medium is determined by audience, purpose, and message. The tools that you have to use are things you're already familiar with, sentences and paragraphs, but we need to add to that, right? Tables, headings, bulleted lists, numbered lists, page numbers, running headers, tables, and figures. For instance, headings. What does a heading do for you? It shows organization in the document. And we'll have some examples later on. But right now, think about this. You crack open a physics textbook, and it's wall-to-wall text. What do? What do you want to do when you see that wall-to-wall text? You want to shut it, put it under your pillow, and hope that whole osmosis thing really pans out for you. But if it's broken up, right? Newton, blah, blah, blah. Laws of motion, blah, blah, blah. Laws of, all right, well, okay, now it's been chunked up. I can understand it more clearly. Same thing with your writing, your memos that you're going to be writing as a professional, proposals, reports. Use headings. It puts the reader in charge. Plus, right, because if I'm reading the Scarlet Letter, I have to read it straight through, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. But if I'm reading a geotechnical report before I begin designing a foundation and a building to go on top of that geotech, the fact of the matter is I don't want to have to read the whole report. If you're doing the report for me, you're a geotech engineer I trust, we flip through, look for that table. Does the table say something I expect to see? Yep, let's go. Don't even have to read it. Does it say something I don't expect to see? Ah, dang it. Now I'm going to start reading through, but I don't have to read it straight through. I can read by headings. It puts me in charge, right? It's not a novel, it's a report. It's supposed to be a usable document. So when we use headings, typically we use a different kind of font for the heading than we do for the paragraph text. So sans serif text and then serif text for your paragraph font. Serif text, serif means tail, by the way. Sans serif means no tail. Serif means tail or line. So you notice it on the serif text there, we've got little tails on the lines. And then the paragraph text in sans serif font. The point is you use one or the other for your headings and then your paragraph, right? Why do you do that? Puts the reader in charge. Gives me 2 verbal cues for figuring out what kinds of information I'm looking at. 2 written cues as to what kind of information I'm looking at. It shows me a breakup and organization. It means that I can pick where I want to start reading, right? Because again, we're not telling stories, we are relaying technical information. All right, summarize. Technical writing means making the document with your reader in mind. Who's your reader? Why will they be reading your document? What are they going to be looking for? And beyond just the words, how does the document's arrangement? How does its visuals, right? Page numbers, headings, running header, tables, table of contents. How do those things help the reader? Questions to consider for the future. How is technical writing different than fiction? Well, we talked about organization, right? Good technical writing probably doesn't have to be read in order, whereas good fiction really does. Suspense. In fiction, you want suspense. You don't want to know what's going to happen next. You want to find out, right? In technical writing, you want to kill the suspense, right? What is the book To Kill a Mockingbird about? You got to read it, right? Because it doesn't say racism and murder in the title. It says To Kill a Mockingbird. What about in a technical document? It should tell you exactly what you're reading about. There should be no suspense. The purpose of literature, of course, is to entertain or to educate. The purpose of technical writing is to let me make a decision or perform an action, right? You write a document, I read it. I should be able to make a decision or perform an action. And then what will my goals be when writing as a professional? Another question to consider later in life, right? When you're writing as an engineer, what are your goals going to be? Decrease cost, increase safety, right? The stuff that we talked about earlier in this particular video. Okay. Y'all have a good one. This has been Pete talking to you about technical communication. We will talk more soon.